Hi and welcome. My name is John Meza. I'm the Director of Student Affairs and District Safety for the Tempe Union High School District. And we want to talk to you a little bit about how we handle social media threats here at the school district and at our schools. You know, we live in a crazy society where anybody overseas, 1,000 miles away, can take an image off the internet. They can create an account under your name, or your name. They can create a threat with that photo, and then they can send it out to hundreds of students that they don't even know at our schools, and it creates incredible panic. The number one thing that we do here is we take all social media threats seriously. Most of them are either kids that say, hey, I was joking. Some are trying to get back at other kids, and they don't believe that it really intended to threaten the school. But let me ask you this. Do we take do we say, I think that kid's just joking? No, we have to take them all seriously. So what I want to do is walk you through a little bit on how we handle these cases when they come through. Because I'll tell you this right now, social media threats, they can come up on the weekend, they can come in the middle of the night. Sometimes we get them right before school starts, in the middle of the school, or after school. And when we receive that really, it changes how we respond. If we get a social media threat over the weekend, we have time to notify parents. We can make a lot of security measures. But what happens if we get a social media threat at 7:30 in the morning, right when everybody's converging on the school? It creates quite a challenge. The number one thing when we receive these social media threats is the priority of the school and its safety of the students and staff. The number one thing that we're doing when we get these threats is to get law enforcement and security resources on campus. We have to get boots on the ground to make sure that we have resources there to ensure that the school is safe. That's the first thing. That's the top priority. The second thing is we start, as a school district, helping the police department with investigating the threat. Because we have to determine, is this a credible threat? Sometimes, early on in the stages, we've determined that we're thinking, like, I'll give you an example. And Jennifer Luer is going to talk more about social media and how pictures can be taken. But you can do a Google reverse image search, and you can determine if a picture is either somebody's property or it's a picture that's stolen off the internet. So oftentimes we're doing that right away. We're trying to determine if somebody posts a picture of a gun, is that individual's gun, or is this a gun that they just took off a website and put it on there? So we're gathering data right off the bat. We're working in conjunction with the police department. I will tell you this, on all the social media threats that we had at our district, first phone call I'm getting is from the police department. And we are talking, and we're communicating on A, how many police officers we have on campus, how many security we have on campus, and we start talking about the threat. The police department starts conducting their investigation. They're doing background investigation on who posted this, where is it coming from, what's the validity of the threat. As the school district, what we're doing is we're gathering information as well. We're assessing that information. Is this our student? Is this a student from another school that knows this person? We're immediately trying to gather information for the investigation. We're assisting law enforcement in their investigation. I will tell you this, it's not like on TV. CSI, they wrap up the case within a half hour or an hour. That's really not how it is. So one thing that's real important for parents to understand is it does take time to go through the investigation. But the thing is that the investigation starts immediately on assessing the credibility of the threat. And what the biggest and most important thing for our families is they want to be communicated. They want to know what's going on. And we are working really hard on gathering that information and getting that out to parents. Sometimes it takes some time to gather that information. Sometimes we cannot tell you that it's a credible threat. It's not credible because it takes time for us to determine that. But the important thing is that we take all threats seriously. We may get a threat that initially we're thinking, okay, because of this or that, this probably is not a credible threat. But until we're 100% sure, we're going to play it like it's real. And that's real important for folks to know. communicating with families, and Ms. Lure is going to talk more about that. And then follow up. There's potential school discipline if somebody makes a threat. You know, the days of saying bomb in an airport are done. You can't do it. The days of saying school shooting or school threats, can't do it. So there's a discipline aspect of it, even if you're joking. The FBI has a new program about, you know, educating young kids on it's not cool to joke about threats and posting pictures that can be construed as threats, because it causes a lot of panic and a lot of uncertainty in our schools. So and the last thing that I want to talk about is our partnership with law enforcement here in the Valley. Tempe Police Department, Phoenix Police Department, Chandler, Mesa. We really have a good partnership, and that is critical when we're investigating these types of cases, because we have to work together, and we have to work together. Communication has to be immediate to gather the information, assess, determine if it's a legitimate threat or not, and then to communicate back to parents. Is your child safe? We house the most precious thing that belongs to you, and that's your children. And I get that. I understand that you want information immediately. But I want to assure you that we are working on that. We're working, number one, on the safety of the school. Number two, we're trying to gather information to let you know, are your students safe at the school? So the next step that I want to do is I want to introduce Jennifer Lure, who's going to cover aspects of social media and give some parents some insight on things that they can look for and some helpful tips.
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Lure. I'm the Executive Director of Community Relations here at the Tempe Union High School District, and I'm responsible really for ensuring that there is a communication between our district and families. I also do a lot to put out the good news when we're doing great things in Tempe Union, and work with the staff to make sure that they are well informed about what's going on. The most important thing I can do though in this district is ensure that when an emergency is going on, that families have proper communication. It is a tough job. I want you to know though that I take it very seriously. I do have a background in emergency communication. I worked for the American Red Cross. I was actually there during 9/11, and I know that getting out information can save lives. And so I'm going to talk through two things with you today. One, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can do as a family with your student to be safe, and then I'm going to show you some of the things that we do while we're trying to assess the information that has come in, because it is difficult to communicate with you while we are in that moment. You know, we all have that fight or flight in us when we are worried, and when our child could be in danger, we have our parental instincts that kick in. And so I want to take this time when we don't have that fight or flight going on in our minds to talk to you a little bit about how we manage things. So everybody knows about social media. Some of the most popular apps are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube. There's also an app called WhatsApp that parents should probably be aware of. It is a texting app that people can use that doesn't go through your normal texting function. So some parents may not know about it, but it's actually one of the top 10 used apps in 2018. Let me break down the Instagram post so that if we were to get a threat, some of the things that I'm going to look at and some of the things that you can take a look at on your child's Instagram account. So to start, we have your name. This is the username. I've taken C. McLaughlin's Instagram post. He's Channel 5 anchor, and he will appreciate this because it is a picture of him winning a lucky shot at the Fiesta Bowl golf tournament. So it says here, the real scene on TV. It says that scene is at Marriott Mountain Shadows. It shows the picture, and down here is his summary of it. Things you need to keep in mind that just because Scene says he's at Marriott Mountain Shadows doesn't mean that he's at Marriott Mountain Shadows. He could be at home posting this 12 hours later, and he can still choose to say that he was at Marriott Mountain Shadows when that photo was taken. So right off the bat, if you see something posted and it says Desert Vista High School, if it says McClintock High School, it does not necessarily mean that that person is physically at that school. They've just chosen that location to tie to their photo. Down here you can take a look and see how many likes it has, how many people have seen this photo. It can vary, and really taking a look at that image and looking in the background and seeing, is this person with people I know? Is this in an environment that I'm familiar with? The next thing that we look at when I'm looking at a social media account are a couple things. If you tap on their username, you're going to find this screen, and this tells you about C. McLaughlin's page. So here's his username. He's got 379 posts. He has a lot of followers. He has 1,800 followers, and he follows 113 people. Right here explains what it is that Scene does, and this is who he is. Down here are his pictures. Oftentimes when we do get a social media threat, we'll find that the person has very few posts, maybe even just one. They'll have not very many followers, and they may be following a lot of people, because what somebody might do is go on and start clicking and to follow everybody that they know in hopes of getting followers back. And then finally, looking to see how many photos do they have. Is the only photo that is on this account the threat that's come across? Did they just create this account? Or is this an account that has multiple photos and it shows a student or a person you know in their environment, and then there is something that can be startling that gets posted by that person? Snapchat is a little bit more of a mystery, I think, to many of us. It is something that came about several years ago that also shares images. However, Snapchat's claim to fame was that the images don't stick around. And so users really enjoyed that because they thought they could send a photo that wouldn't come back days, weeks, or months down the road, and it was an instantaneous communication. I'm here to tell you, though, that is not the case. Snapchat does save all their photos. And we know this because in Facebook they have this thing called this time last year or 4 years ago, and it'll remind you of the posts that you made 3 or 4 years ago on Facebook. Well, those of us with Snapchat accounts are starting to see, here's some snaps from Halloween of 2016. So they are saving them, they are cataloging them, and they're starting to put them back into your feed. This is an important distinction that we need to make with our students and with our friends and family. Nothing that we put on the internet ever goes away. Many of our threats do come via Snapchat because it is that instantaneous, and a lot of students think that it's not going to tie back to them. This is what happens when I pull up my feed on my Snapchat account. It shows me who my friends are, it shows me who the most recent person is that sent me a message, this is their screen name, and then if I've received the message or not. When we do get a social media threat on a Snapchat, we take a look at a couple of things. Up here is going to be the person's username. You can do a search to try and figure out what that person's profile is going to look like. These 3 dots up here are oftentimes very telling for us as well. That will help us know that it is a Snapchat, because when you click on those dots, it allows you to forward the Snapchat or to do a couple of different things. But it will help us understand, because oftentimes we're just getting an image. A student or a parent is sending us this image, and we have to begin trying to figure out who posted it and how do we get access to that person. The police department obviously has a much broader toolbox than we do. They are able to go to Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook and actually get a search warrant to find out who that account is connected to. But what we can find out is this person a student? And if they are, where do they live? Can we talk to their parents? Can we get them out of class? Can we begin to start to assist law enforcement so that we can find out right away whether or not this is a credible threat? If you click on Becca Smouse's Snapchat, she's actually our digital media coordinator, we'll find that Becca is not a safe Snapchat user. Becca does not have her location services turned off. So the night that I did a screenshot of this for our presentation, it actually showed me the exact location where Becca was at and where she was taking pictures from. You have a couple of options here when you're looking at somebody's profile. You can turn them off and do a do not disturb. You can pick how long you want to delete your chats for, and you can block a person. So what I think we need to instill in our students and in ourselves is that we have control over our feeds. And if somebody is sending us stuff that we don't like, there are tools within the program to block them. Once you click on your profile, here are all the things that Snapchat is going to be asking for to set up your account. Your name, your username, your birthday, your cell phone, your email address. Students and young people have grown up in a time where they don't know life without social media, without their iPhones, without their whatever mobile phone they might have. So it's very second nature to them to give out a birthday, to give out a cell phone number, to give out an email address. But we don't need to do that in order to set up these accounts. We can create private accounts, and we can have our kids do it too. We can limit information that we put into our profiles. We could consider using a false birthday, maybe make that birthday by 2 or 3 days off. You can create family email addresses so that your social media accounts are tied to something that all the members of the family have access to, especially the parents. So when you set up a Snapchat account, mom and dad can be able to log in and know what the password is, and then to get emails from it. We also want to encourage people to not follow accounts of people they don't know. I like to tell my friends and family that I really only connect with people on social media that I would invite into my home for dinner, with the exception of with Twitter and Snapchat. I will follow people that are celebrities, obviously, or sports people, because that is part of the fun of social media. But I will tell you, if you're just an average person and I don't know you, more than likely I'm not going to connect with you via social media, because you really are letting them into your life. And we need to help our students understand how important it is, because in the 80s and 90s we talked about stranger danger, and you don't get into a car with somebody you don't know. We really need to impress upon our young people that we cannot engage with people on social media who they do not know. It can be just as dangerous. And finally, don't be fooled. Just because somebody follows the Desert Vista cheer line or follows the Corona del Sol basketball team, it doesn't mean that they go to that school. It doesn't mean that they're on that team. These accounts are public and open to everybody, and so oftentimes you will see the students following each other simply because they have similar accounts that they follow. Make sure that they really are who they are and that they attend your school. John talked earlier about some of the things that kids do. This post right here was posted during the teacher walkout last year. And a student created it. Look at those dots. What do we know? Snapchat. Actually created a fake post that said, due to the walkout, everybody's grades are what they are, and if you are failing, you must go to summer school. Caused a lot of panic because we were very clear in communicating that work would be able to be made up, that we would be working with the students, but you get teenagers with a lot of time on their hands and they get creative. They even put in a fake web address that didn't even exist, tempeunion.org/summer school. Once we found it, we added that page and said you are part of a Snapchat, a fake Snapchat account. It is not true, grades are not frozen, you will not fail. John also talked a little bit about reverse Google image searches. So this post right here was the social media threat that we had at Desert Vista. One of the first things that was done was to cut this photo out and do the reverse Google image search. What we found was this website, Guns International. And look at what we found. We found that exact photo that was used in the social media post. Now, as John mentioned, it doesn't mean that that isn't a legitimate threat. But it's very different than somebody standing in their bathroom taking a selfie of themselves holding a gun. That person may or may not actually have access to a firearm. But as John said, we don't dismiss it, we still continue to investigate it, but can help us understand. And I think as parents, it can give you some tools to take a look at if you want to see. We've had social media threats where we found the image on Pinterest. You name it, they've pulled it off. So this is one of the things that we do look at. And then 3 days later, we got a call saying there was another social media threat to Desert Vista. And so this came from a school district way far out in the East Valley, and we said, can you send us a picture of what the threat looks like? Well, sure enough, this was a Snapchat, and it was the same Snapchat that we had seen at Desert Vista 3 days before. It had just been forwarded. And so, you know, other kids were saying, Desert Vista kids, please be safe, be careful. And this is the problem with forwarding, because you don't want to create a second sense of panic with the same post. So what we ask is that parents and students report the post, don't repost it. Because 3 days later, the same threat was coming up again. And again, it can cause chaos and fear and really just send our schools into scaring our students, and we don't want to have that happen. For parents, a lot of us are on Facebook, and it can be a great tool to communicate. I will tell you this, that in an emergency, we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but our main messages are going to be on our website. There are lots of Facebook groups out there that parents enjoy being on. You get information, Awatuki 411 is a very popular one. I believe Chandler also has one. But we need to be careful about the information that gets posted in there. We want to make sure that you are getting your information from a legitimate official account. People post things, my child heard this from this at school, and here's what I think is going on. Well, it's like a terrible game of telephone, and we don't want to perpetuate those rumors. We don't want to make people have more panic in their heart than they need to. And so, as a district, we want our families to help us with that. If you see things that are posted on one of your Facebook groups that isn't from an official source, jump in and remind folks to visit tempeunion.org. We will have an emergency message with official information, because rumors can be very impactful. After the shooting down in Tucson with Gabby Giffords, there was a rumor out that she had died. And it was devastating to her friends, her family, her constituents. And it turned out not to be true. And so what we need to ensure is that any information that we pass along or that we're reading is something from a knowledgeable source. I'm going to invite John Meza back up here to talk a little bit about what we're going to do in an emergency, because again, it's important. There's a reason when you're on an airplane that the flight attendants go through the emergency every single time, because you're there, you're calm, you're listening. And when an emergency happens, many of you can probably do what those flight attendants have told you to do without even thinking about it. And it can save lives. I've heard speakers from the Miracle on the Hudson, and they've talked about how everybody followed the instructions on what to do when that plane went into the Hudson River several years ago, the American Airlines flight. And so what we do know is that if we can remove some of that panic with education, we can hopefully save lives. So in an emergency, there could be a lot of things that happen. And it is our worst nightmare, but I can tell you this, we are prepared. John, just talk real quickly about a lot of the things that we're doing at our schools to help them prepare for an emergency.
Okay. First of all, it starts with emergency procedures, emergency operations, which we have for the district. We set all our plans in conjunction with the fire department and the police department. One thing that I do want to talk about is, in case of an actual emergency, you'll be notified of, there's a term called reunification sites. That's if we have to remove the students to another area and then reunite them with you, that is something that is possible. We can also do a on-site reunification, meaning we're moving them to a certain area within the campus, and then we're going to reunite them with you also. The important thing to remember on that, it has to be controlled and has to be managed. We can't just have folks running down, grabbing their kid and running off, because we don't know who we're releasing them to. So it will be you will get information that says, please go to the auditorium, it could be the gymnasium, it may be a different school, depending on the situation, and wait for instructions to be reunited. A representative of the school will be there and give you a form where you write your name, your student's name, and then they'll send a runner to go get your student and reunify them with you. So there is plans in place in case of an emergency, but the number one thing as a parent is to look for and get the information of where do I need to go? Do I need to go to the school? Do I need to go to the auditorium? Do I need to go to another school that is identified as a reunification center?
And you know, John and I recently listened in on a training of a school in Texas that had a shooting, and the parents immediately rushed the school site. Believe it or not, they actually hindered the ability for ambulances to get to that school because the roads were jammed with cars. And while that is a very scary thing to have to say and think about, I feel it's important to be able to explain that to you now, why it is so critical to follow our instructions, because none of us want to create any hindrances for law enforcement, for medical services, for anybody who needs to be there to safeguard our students. One of the things that John mentioned with the relocation center is you will need to bring ID. Most of us always carry our IDs, but this is one of those things when you go running out of your house or you go running out of your office, because again, you're in that fight or flight mode, try to remember to have that picture ID with you. It's going to be critical when you come to pick up your student. We also want to be careful about spreading rumors. I mentioned it a little while ago, but keep in mind, even the media can get it wrong sometimes. We have experienced a lot of different things. They're trying to do the right thing. They want to report right information, but the media is also taking in a lot of social media. They're taking in a lot of different things. And as a district, we are trying to communicate as quickly as we can with the media on these situations. But sometimes they can get it wrong as well. As a district, we're going to commit to communicating with you within 30 minutes to at least say we're aware of the situation. But as we learned earlier, things do not get wrapped up in 30 minutes. We will update you regularly. We will do it via text and email and phone. We ask that you ensure that your information is correct on ParentView so that we can contact you in the event of an emergency. We also need you to know that we will continue to follow through on these incidents. We had one of the incidents that took several weeks, but there was charges brought up by law enforcement. We won't be able to talk about the discipline that's provided to these students because of federal privacy rights. We cannot discuss specific student discipline, but I can promise you that this district takes it very seriously and that these students could face long-term suspension all the way up to expulsion, and that we will follow through on that to ensure that people understand the seriousness of what is going on. And finally, we're going to talk with your kids about this. We're going to explain to them that we don't want them to regret a threat. Years down the road when they're looking for a job interview or they're trying to get into a certain college, they can be haunted by these things. We actually have a college athlete who received an award, and they looked back on his when he was 12 years old, he did some Twitter posts that were extremely offensive, and he's now a Heisman Trophy winner, and they're holding that over his head. So having those discussions with your kids at home are really critical. We just need people to understand the seriousness of what is taking place. So John, this can seem really scary, but are our schools a safe place?
You know, and the reality is, in today's society, we have to talk about these kind of things. But the reality is that schools are a very safe place. And we work very hard to ensure that our schools are safe in all aspects. And number one is being prepared. We hope we never have to use our emergency procedures, but we practice them. We have educated our staff. We even educate our students on lockdown drills and things like that. So, and one of the most important things that we talk about is remaining calm. We ask our teachers to remain calm, be mentally prepared. We ask our students to be calm and be mentally prepared. So we ask you as parents to do the same. Just understand that things can happen and what are our procedures, and to remain calm. That will also help with your students feeling not so anxious about this topic.
Well, it's a scary topic, but we really appreciate everybody's willingness to learn more. We're here if you have more questions, and thank you for joining us today.